As we celebrate our achievements as an independent nation, we need to complete the circle of independence. In this regard, we will, therefore, initiate the process of our detachment from the monarchy to become a republic with our own indigenous president as head of state. And I want to indicate I love the Queen. She's a beautiful lady. And apart from being a beautiful lady, a wise lady, and a wonderful lady. But I think time comes.
Our government, our people should welcome them because they represent years of exploitation, oppression, racism, classism, underdevelopment of Africa and African people. But I know there are some people who feel strongly that the royals should not be accommodated in Jamaica. I am one of those persons who feel strongly about it.
Okay then, sir. Thank you. Member of Parliament, Mark Bowden.
MP for this area.
As leader of the opposition.
So you're right when they at the airports.
Yeah.
We got told about security was informed as well. That's correct. They were very quick.
Miss World turned political power player snubbed Kate. The Daily Mail report described Miss Hannah's conversation with Kate as awkward. It referenced a short clip on Twitter that it says appeared to show Miss Hannah giving Kate the cold shoulder during the official event welcoming the royal couple to Jamaica. Miss Hannah says much ado has been made about her supposed snub of Duchess Catherine because of what she described as a 2-second manipulated video clip taken out of context.
Jamaica is a very free and liberal country, and the people are very expressive, and I'm certain that you would have seen the spectrum of expressions yesterday. There are issues here which are, as you would know, unresolved, but your presence gives an opportunity for those issues to be placed in context, put front and center, and to be addressed in as best as we can. But Jamaica is, as you would see, a country that is very proud of our history, very proud of what we have achieved, and we are moving on. And we intend to attain in short order our development goals and fulfill our true ambitions and destiny as an independent, developed, prosperous country.
The government recognizes the importance, particularly in our form of democracy, of structured opportunities for both political parties to meet and discuss issues affecting the nation. To that end, we resumed the Vale Royal talks on February 27, 2022, around an agenda that included national security, constitutional reform, health, and Jamaica 60 commemorations. Madam Speaker, as the issue of constitutional reform and the shift in Jamaica's status as a constitutional monarchy, it was agreed that the approach must be collaborative and guided by expert advice. We will establish an advisory committee, including bipartisan representatives, to review the existing body of work and advise the government in accordance with the jurisprudence. The bills to effect the agreed constitutional amendments will be reviewed by a joint select committee of Parliament and ultimately, and most importantly, Madam Speaker, submitted to the Jamaican people for them to have their say through a referendum.
Madam Speaker, by way of an afterthought, the debate on this bill necessarily involves discussion of constitutional matters. It is worth noting that our sister island in the CARICOM, Barbados has recently taken the required steps to repatriate their sovereignty by establishing a Barbadian as their head of state and first president. That was a bipartisan exercise concluded in a timely manner from start to finish through cooperation between the government and opposition in Barbados. I wish to commend them for it. We in Jamaica should follow now, right away and without delay. The establishment of a non-executive president as our head of state in replacement of the English monarch was agreed by both major political parties over a decade ago. Surely, Madam Speaker, we can work together to take the required constitutional steps to make this happen in the year coming, which is the nation's 60th anniversary year. Prime Minister, let us move forward with this now. With a common fixity of purpose, time come. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We will not support a phased approach to dealing with the matter of full decolonization, because the phased approach does not guarantee its attainment. It may never happen if we do it that way.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness has responded to some of the views of the leader of the opposition, Mark Golding. He says he had met with Mr. Golding and it was agreed that some aspects of the constitutional reform would be done on a phased basis.
We ended up having a meeting under the auspices of the Vale Royal talks. I thought those were good meetings, and we came to an understanding that the process would be a phased process, that we would move on the matters on which we agreed, which would be the Jamaica becoming a republic, and the other matters that were a little bit more complex, on which consensus ought to be fully realized, that those would come in the second phase of the process.
Mr. Holness says with that, there was a reasonable expectation that they were proceeding with good faith. He also addressed the matter on inclusion of the Jamaican society in reviewing the present constitution.
And you would recall that there were some issues about the membership, and we reviewed that, and we extended the process of consultation to include island-wide consultation and specific interest group consultation. So my own view on it is that the CRC, the Constitutional Reform Committee, Review Committee, they have done quite an extensive job.
And if there's one thing we all seem to agree on, is that we must end the reign of the British monarchy as a titular head of the Jamaican state. Now we're learning from the opposition leader that he's not prepared to sign off on that. He wants to twin it with the more contentious issue, the issue that has divided the country, and that issue being what should be our apex court or court of final appeal. Should we stick with the Privy Council or should we go with the Caribbean Court of Justice? People, there's no consensus on whether we should stick with the Privy Council or go with the CCJ. And we have been debating that now for a long time. So much so that it is my understanding that we decided that, listen, we're going to push ahead with what there's consensus on. And the consensus is end the British monarchy as the head of state of Jamaica. We're going to go republic. There was an issue of whether we should go for an executive president or a ceremonial president. That delayed us for several years. Now we seem to have settled that we will go the route of the ceremonial head of state, with some powers, limited. And now Mr. Golding is saying that, listen, not even the push, the agreement to go with a Jamaican republic, he's prepared to sign off on?
One day, they agree with something. Then a few months later, if it is not political expedient, they change their minds. That is not leadership. We call that flip-flopping. The opposition supported and seconded the Speaker's nomination. Then they switched flip-floppers. The opposition initially proposed, and supported salary increases for politicians. Then they switched flip-floppers. The opposition supported the states of public emergency, and then all of a sudden, they don't support it. How can Jamaica have any trust in people who will just sway with the wind, whose word means nothing? What they say today, they resile from tomorrow. Jamaica cannot afford unstable, unprincipled leadership. We have been there, and we are done with that. Madam Speaker, Jamaicans want better lives. They need a team that has been winning for Jamaica, a team that is tried, tested, and has delivered tangible results.
On Friday, Mr. Golding said his party will not sign the document, the draft document from the Constitutional Reform Committee, unless the contentious issue of Jamaica adopting the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, is settled. What does that mean, given the contention? It means, in practical terms, we will be delayed again for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Because there's no consensus on that. But there's division in the country, even within its own ranks, that's the PNP, over whether we should go the route of the CCJ or stay put with the Privy Council. So what is Mr. Golding saying now? For as long as it takes to settle the differences over the CCJ, we will continue to be a British colonial, post-colonial outpost where His Majesty the King will continue to be the head of state of Jamaica. That's what it means in practical terms. And in the cut and thrust of a competitive democracy such as ours, you can play your card, you know. And my own take is that he's feeling his oats. He's in the political ascendancy, and he's wanting to flex his political muscles or perceptions of political strength. But don't forget, in our politics, there are ebbs and flows. Tides rise and fall. So don't push it. Yeah? We're not an authoritarian command state where you're going to dictate terms, where you're going to decide what happens, when, how, where. That's not the kind of democracy we are, sir. And if there's consensus that we go to the Republican status of Jamaica, why delay that? Because we're not going the route yet of the CCJ. I think it is raw politics he's playing, and he must be called out for it. Raw politics. There's consensus on one thing. Let's do that and continue the agitation, the lobby for the CCJ. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Here's what Noragay Banton reported on Friday with the opposition leader's position.
Co-chair of the committee and Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Fort, announced that the body had come to a consensus on the way forward and would be making its recommendations to Cabinet. But in a letter dated May 7, 2024, addressed to Prime Minister Andrew Holness, Mark Golding has indicated he's not prepared to play ball. He has instructed Donna Scott Motley and Anthony Hilton not to sign off on the recommendations of the committee. The two have been members of the body for 12 months and have been part of the deliberations on its work. Mr. Golding told the Prime Minister that unless the move from the British monarchy is paired with leaving the London-based Privy Council, the opposition would not approve the document. The PNP president also told the Prime Minister that leaving the Privy Council is a fundamental issue for his party. Mr. Golding says coupling the removal of the British monarch with accepting the Caribbean Court of Justice would allow the country to proceed on its constitutional reform process in a bipartisan manner that embraces what he describes as full decolonization. The report is shortly to be presented to the Cabinet for approval.
Thank you, Nora. Despite Mr. Golding's insistence that his party will not sign off on the Constitutional Reform Committee recommendations until the issue of the CCJ is settled and twinned to it, the minister leading the process in terms of ministerial responsibility, Marlene Malahoo Fort, she was very measured in her response. Very measured. She said that she remains hopeful that there will be consensus on the report. Here's Dana Davis' report on Mrs. Malahoo Fort's response.
Marlene Malahoo Fort is undeterred by Mark Golding's threat to withhold his support. She says the work must go on.
The CRC process has been worthwhile, and we have made great progress so far, but the work must continue until the task is done. While consensus of the government and opposition is a required step to advance reform of the deeply entrenched provisions, ultimately it is the people of Jamaica who will decide.
The minister says the report to be submitted to Cabinet contains only recommendations which received the full support of the committee members.
It is regrettable that the leader of the opposition has instructed his representatives on the committee not to sign the report, even though the report includes only those recommendations to which all members of the committee agreed.
In his letter to the Prime Minister announcing that his party's representatives would not sign the document, Mr. Golding appeared to suggest that Donna Scott Motley and Anthony Hilton did not have the authority to approve any recommendations on their own. Minister Malahoo Fort is maintaining that the work of the Reform Committee will be done in phases. According to the government's expressed timeline, the matter of the country's final appellate court will be dealt with in phase 2 of the process. The opposition leader is insisting that it be handled in phase 1, along with the question of replacing the monarchy. The minister is urging all Jamaicans to make their voice heard when the matter is put to a referendum. She says she remains hopeful.
It is the hope of the CRC that when the time comes, all eligible Jamaican voters will turn out and demonstrate that it is not about political preferences, but that you, the people, want a definitive say in our governance arrangements. I'm hopeful, I'm really hopeful that both government and opposition can work together to help create the Republic of Jamaica.
Dana Davy for Nationwide News.
I think Minister Malahoo Fort's response is commendable. Classy, and she's reading the room well. She's reading the room well. This is an issue that we have made very little progress on over the last 62 years. 1. 2, it is an issue that we need to maximize agreement on as a people. It is not an issue to flex political muscle and to ram it through based on whatever numbers you may have or perceived weakness or strength. No. And we need to say to Mark Golding this morning, what have you done to the members representing the opposition and the CRC? You have emasculated them. You have emasculated them. You have really reduced them to being observers, because of what value is their contribution if, having participated as they have, and there's agreement among all the members, you then turn around and cut them off at the knees, huh? On a matter that has a long trajectory, long history of disagreements. You don't do that. That's not leadership. That's bullying. And that's not helpful. Marlene Malahoo Fort's response shows maturity. Maturity.
I respect your ability to understand the situation, unlike the Samphire opposition who tries to twist the narrative because they belittle your understanding. What is different today, Madam Speaker, is that we have a government that will resist the temptation for reckless policy decisions. But hear what, Madam Speaker, hear this one now. We have a government that truly puts people first. One day, they agree with something. Then a few months later, if it is not political expedient, they change their minds. That is not leadership. We call that flip-flopping. How can Jamaica have any trust in people who will just sway with the wind, whose word means nothing? What they say today, they resile from tomorrow. Jamaica cannot afford unstable, unprincipled leadership. We have been there, and we are done with that. Madam Speaker, Jamaicans want better lives. They need a team that has been winning for Jamaica. A team that is tried, tested, and has delivered tangible results.